interdisciplinary study of anti-Semitism. And I see there's a lot of new faces here, so we're circulating a sign-up sheet if you want to receive notices of our other events. We deal with a wide range of issues and also a comparative perspective. Please sign up, and we also have a newsletter that we send out once a week if anybody's interested. So today, it's really a great pleasure and honor to have Professor George Pan here. He's going to speak about Jews in China, legends, history, and new perspectives. He's the Dean of the Center of Jewish Studies in Shanghai at the CJSS. And just on a personal note, I was in Shanghai about 3 weeks ago at the center, and it was really an honor to be at the center and to meet Professor Pan and his colleagues. So it's wonderful that he's here so soon after our visit to Shanghai, that he's able to be here with us. Professor Pan is not only the Dean of the Center for Jewish Studies in Shanghai, he's also the professor and director. He's the director also of the Institute of European and Asian Studies at the Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences. He's the vice chairperson of the Chinese Society of Middle East Studies and was the director of the Institute of Eurasian Studies at SASS. He's a senior advisor to the Chinese Eurasian Forum and is a senior advisor on issues of anti-terror affairs to the Shanghai Municipality and the Ministry of Public Security of the PRC. He studied at Renmin University in Beijing and the East China Normal University in Shanghai. He's published widely. He's written numerous books and articles on the Jews of China, the Jews in Shanghai, and more generally the Jews of Asia from a comparative perspective. And he's also written on issues of Islam and Confucianism and the development of Chinese Islam. He's won all sorts of awards, numerous awards. I won't go into details, but I'll mention a few. In 2005, he was appointed by the UN Secretary General Kofi Annan as a member of the high-level group for the Alliance of Civilizations. In 2004, he won the St. Petersburg 300 Medal for contribution to Chinese-Russian relations and was awarded by President Putin. In '96, he was awarded a special award or prize for research on Canadian Jews in China. And the list goes on, so it's really wonderful that he's here. And on a footnote, when I was in Shanghai, my master's degree is actually in urban development planning, urban studies. And I remember approaching Shanghai from the airport for the first time and seeing the skyline of Shanghai. And from a distance, it looked like New York City from afar. And as I got closer, I realized the buildings were about 20–30% bigger and newer. And I was impressed. And then the taxi turned to the left, and I looked down the river, and I realized that Shanghai is probably 3 times the size of Manhattan. It kind of blew my mind. And it's really an impressive city, an impressive place. And having the opportunity to tour with members of Professor Pan's Center some of the places of the Jewish community, the history of the Jewish community, and visiting the synagogues and the neighborhoods where people live, where people took refuge from pogroms and from the Holocaust. It was really a moving experience to see firsthand how the Chinese society took in Jewish refugees at a time of great need of the Jewish people. So it was fascinating to see this and to understand the connection, which is deeply appreciated in China, this part of Chinese Jewish history. So it's really nice that you're here, and welcome.
Thank you, Charles, and happy to be here first time. Also first time lecturing Yale. This is a great honor for me. I just discussed with Charles. I will maybe talk about 30 minutes, and we keep more time for the discussion. And I will not read the paper. I just show you a photo. Every photo I will give you the comment explanation. So first part, I just give general overview, general picture Jews in China. And basically we call the 4 waves of Jewish immigration to China. And firstly, in the ancient time, around the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries, Jews come to China around the Silk Road, this one, around Silk Road to Kaifeng, I think, the Jewish community in Kaifeng. Because Kaifeng became capital of China during the Song Dynasty. Jewish community in Kaifeng was very prosperous, about 5,000 people. Basically, after 12 centuries, gradually, very long process, they assimilated into Chinese culture. And the second wave is modern times. After the British opened the door to China, many the businessmen come. Among them, Sephardic Jews, like Sassoon family, Kadoli family, all come. They are from the Iraq. They go to the India, like Sassoon family. They set a company in Bombay, or we call it Bombay, now they call it Mumbai. Then they all the way to Singapore. In 1841, they set office in Hong Kong. 1984, sorry, 1841 in Hong Kong, 1845 in Shanghai. The third group is very close connection with here. It's Russian Jews. They escaped from the pogrom. You know, the 1881, the pogrom in Russia, Antisemitism, then the revolution, civil war. So several million Jews, Russian Jews, come to North America. A very small group to Siberia, to the city Harbin. Then some Jews from Harbin to Tianjin, to Shanghai, to many other cities. It's a third wave. And last one is a refugee, escaped from Holocaust. They're from Europe, so all the way by ship. But after war broke out between UK and Nazi Germany, they had to close Soviet Union. And then after war broke out between Soviet Union and Germany, nobody can escape from Europe. Mostly come to Shanghai, because Shanghai is the only city open the door. So this is very, just to give you an idea, you can imagine. Then I give many photos about Kaifeng. I just give one. I don't want to take too much time about Kaifeng. This is very significant in synagogue in Kaifeng. This is only synagogue, like Chinese temple, in the world. You can find this synagogue in the Beis Hatafushu Museum in Tel Aviv. There is a model there, and also in Israeli stamp. In Israeli stamp, this called the synagogue in China. Very confusing, and you don't know it's Buddhist and Taoist and mixed. And anyway, this is only one Chinese style synagogue in the world. And the Kaifeng Jews, we can maybe have time to discuss if you have more questions. And the Sephardic, and this is a synagogue in Hong Kong called Hell Live Synagogue. Founded 1901, 1902, donated by Sassoon family. And recently they are renovating, very nice. And Jewish community in Hong Kong, about 3,000 to 5,000 people, active, very successful. And this is Sephardic synagogue in Shanghai, called Rahil Synagogue, and still there. And renovating for 1998, the President Mrs. Clinton's visit. So I was guide for Mrs. Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. He visited the synagogue and with the Secretary Albrecht and all other, and he's a Jewish member of the delegation. Now Russian Ashkenazi Jews in China's main synagogue in Harbin, built in 1907. You can see the Russian, the Harbin synagogue. And recently they renovated the synagogue. There's a museum. I will talk this later. This is the Jewish community, the leadership of Jewish community. Just two people. Rabbi Bisselet from Russia, Orthodox, and Mr. Kaufman is the leader of Jewish community. A very interesting thing is that his son, Teddy Kaufman, now is President Iguda Yosef Singh in Israel. It means the Association of Former Residents in China. He is president, and he also elected as a president called Israel-China Friendship Association. They're very active. Only one synagogue in Tianjin. Tianjin there was about 2,000 to 3,000 different opinions. Some people said 5,000. Very active Jewish community. Most is Russian Jews, Russian Ashkenazi Jews. And this is a very famous Jewish school in Tianjin. Many of the Russian Jews educated there learn to speak English. And still now in the United States, there's Alumni Association of Tianjin Jewish School. And every year they get together. Now Shanghai, the Russian Ashkenazi Jews in China is very active in Shanghai, especially after early 1930s when Japanese occupied Harbin. Since Japan was alliance of Hitler, so many Jews and some anti-Semitism in Harbin, not by Chinese, by the Chinese security police and by white Russian, very anti-Semitic. So many people left Harbin, come to Shanghai. In the middle of 1930s, about 5,000 Jews in Shanghai. This is Chief Rabbi Meir Ashkenazi Lubavitch from Vladivostok. At the beginning, he was a spiritual leader of Russian Jews. But he's so kind, so finally he became the really leader for all the Jewish community. Not only Russian Jews, he survived Jews, German-speaking refugee. Now the refugee, 4 waves, they arrived in Shanghai, Portland, December 1938. Remember, Kristallnacht, November 1938. Last year, I was very honored to be invited by United Nations in New York to give a speech in 70th anniversary, 1938 and 2008. The United Nations have special seminar and ceremony in memory of the 70th anniversary of Kristallnacht. And Ambassador of Israel, Ambassador of Germany all joined us. And only me from China reason because Shanghai was only city opened the door after Kristallnacht. Even United States at that time closed the door. So Shanghai was a bigger city, larger city, opened the door for the refugee. So only in the 10 months, 20,000 refugees coming to Shanghai, especially from Germany, Austria, and later occupied Czechoslovakia, Poland, or Lithuania. And so before the Pearl Harbor, December of 1941, Japanese occupied Shanghai. The Jewish community in Shanghai already, had through congregation they call them, Sephardic Jews, Russian Jews, and refugees from Germany. The refugee community is also, there's some group like Polish Jews. They are independent group. They speak Yiddish and very Orthodox from many yeshiva, like yeshiva. And the Jews from Czechoslovakia, small group. And German Jews, Austrian Jews, basically it's Reform, not very Orthodox. So there are many very interesting things in Shanghai. For example, Jewish club in Shanghai. Now it's a building of Shanghai Conservatory Music. When the people come to Shanghai, we sometimes bring them to this building. And the Jewish hospital in Shanghai, the medical doctor, most is from Germany and Russia. And Harbin, the Jewish cemetery in Harbin, still 600 stone. I will show you the former Prime Minister Olmert's grandfather's stone. I will show you later. His family from Harbin. And very interesting, in Shanghai, there is a Jewish company of Shanghai, the volunteer corps. It's, in 1930s, it's only Jewish, we cannot say army, Jewish fighting unit in the whole world. Not in Palestine, not in the United States, not in Europe, but in Shanghai. Hundreds soldiers and 4 officers. Second part, just to talk some uniqueness of the I say the case of China in the annals of Jewish diaspora. Firstly, you can find all the political organizations in Shanghai. From the very left wing, you can see this Jewish Labor Party, also Jewish Communist Party. For very right wing, you go this. All this group you can find very interesting, very active. And this photo is Jewish Labor Party in Shanghai in 1947. When I in Israel, I met the later Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. I showed this photo to him. He said, I never know Labor Party has a branch in Shanghai. And Beta is very active in China. It's a revisionist youth school. And many young people join because they are very active for sports and sometimes military training. And this is Shanghai Beta, a memorial service for Vladimir Jabotinsky in 1940. So many Russian Jews is a revisionist group. So some later became the Olmet family, very active. So some became the member of Guang and Likud. And now the Kadima, some is members I know, of course they're old now, from China. And Mr. Zorah Hardik, he is the leader of Mizrahi in China. He was from Poland, and later he became the Minister of Religious Affairs in Israel for almost 15 years. And 1996, when he was 91 years old, he came back to China. I was a guide accompanying him. He keeps the land. So he is also the people signing the Independent Declaration in 1947-48. And this man is Mordecai Olmet, the father of the former Prime Minister Olmet. And he was born in Harbin. And his wife also was born in Harbin. They both can speak fluent Chinese with Harbin accent. And this is, he come back in 1946, raised money for the, Haganah, for the Yugong, for the independent war, the coming independent war. So he met the ladies committee in Shanghai. And now I just talk the political. Now I talk something about economic. Economic activity is very active and very successful, especially by Sephardic Jews. And the first Jewish family business in China is Sassoon family. This set is Mr. David Sassoon and through his son. That set the David Sassoon and Son Company in Bombay, India, 1932. Then they found the opportunity in China, because after the Opium War, China opened the door. Hong Kong and Shanghai all became the open port. So Sassoon family come first set office in Hong Kong, and then in Shanghai, I just mentioned 1845. And the family was very successful in China. And this building called Sassoon Building, now it's called the Peace Hotel in Shanghai. It was a symbol of Sassoon family in China, and the family was called the Rothschild in Far East. And very strong economically, and keep very good relations with Chinese leaders. Catholic family, another very influential family. This is Sir Eli Catholic, and the two sons, Lord Lawrence and Lord Horace Catholic. And Lawrence Catholic is very active in the Hong Kong. Last time I met him just 2 months before he passed away in 1993. Horace Kaduri gave a lot of support to education projects, especially to the refugees. The Kaduri family also set many schools, even in Palestine. Yitzhak Rabin told me he graduated from agricultural school, Kaduri Agricultural School in Israel. And the Russian Jews basically do some small business, like a farm business in Shanghai. This is very famous called Siberia Farm Store by the Kribanov family. Yesterday in New York, I was with Lily Klipanov. His uncle, Grigory Klipanov, set this office, set this store. Very interesting thing. This store still in Shanghai now, called Siberia Phone Store, and but not good business because the weather getting warmer. So Shanghai, no people. So they now sell everything, not only phone. When the Lily come back to Shanghai, he come back to his store. So the people say, oh, the former boss, daughter come. In fact, she is a niece. Then I took some cultural education activity in China. Firstly, the Orthodox Judaism, brought by the Polish and some German Jews, of course some Russian Jews. The story about the new yeshiva is very interesting. The yeshiva was very influential yeshiva in Poland, but today is in Belarus. I try and find in Poland, they said, now the territory became part of Belarus. But now the nail, nothing. All the Jewish, the building and and but this yeshiva, why I mentioned this, because the yeshiva just escaped from the Poland before the German invasion in September 1939. And the special things, all yeshiva people, 400 rabbi students escaped. So other yeshiva, most were destroyed by Nazis. But this yeshiva escaped. Then they went to Lithuania and got visa from Japanese Consul General. We call the Japanese single. They all the way come to finally. They first to Japan use a transit visa. They cannot stay longer. They try to get a visa to US. The US closed the door. So in the last minutes, only city is Shanghai. So they come to Shanghai. And the interesting thing, all yeshiva in Shanghai, they continue to study Torah, Talmud every day, like without war. After war, the male yeshiva people left Shanghai. Now we have 2 male yeshiva, one in Brooklyn, another in Jerusalem. When I visited these 2 yeshiva, I was welcomed like hero. They said, you from our home city. And unfortunately now all the Shanghai people pass away. And but the people always remember this. Every year they come back to Shanghai. Therefore, alumni association of New Yeshiva or some organization. And I should mention the newspaper publication by the Jews in China. Only in Shanghai, more than 50 publications by the Jewish community in 8 languages: English, German, Polish, Hebrew, Yiddish, Japanese, Chinese, even Russian. Yeah. This one is very important by Sephardic community called Israel Messenger, found in 1904 and stopped by Japanese in December 1941 after the harbor. And you can see very interesting thing, the Hebrew here, and the English Israel Messenger, and even they have Chinese called 犹太月报. It means the Jewish monthly. And now we cannot find a complete one in China, and can find some. But now, in the National Library of Hebrew University, they keep complete one from first to last. This is Yiddish publication, especially by the Polish Jews. Also, Rabbi Ashkenazi, very active, published in the Yiddish publication. You know, before they come, Chinese already translate some like Shalom Aleichem spoke from Russia and from English. So they brought Yiddish to China. So now we have a PhD candidate under the invitation of the Yiddish publication in China, mainly by the Jews from Central Europe. And this is in Russia, in English, English and Yiddish. You can see here our life, Nasha Jin, Russia. And this is very interesting. This is VJ Day, Japanese surrounding. So they put the flag, Soviet Union, Republic of China, United States, UK, there. They celebrate the victory after World War II. And of course, by refugee, many German publications like this, called Gilbert Post, Yellow Post. And they even do some Yiddish drama in Shanghai. So Chinese people are very interested in this drama. So in the history of Shanghai, we are very proud. We have a Yiddish drama. No other city in China. And then I talk some of course, uniqueness, but generate a lot of things because they are part of the diaspora Jewish community. So when the Jewish community have some, for example, Holocaust influence Shanghai, the Zionism is spread in Shanghai. So, like the Holocaust, they are all come to Shanghai. This photo. We have many this kind of photos. So people left Germany, left Berlin on the way to Shanghai in 1939. And when they come, first 7 days, they live in such kind of 200 people together. Second day, third day, they transfer to some center and camp. And many children come. They can only speak German. They even cannot speak English, not Chinese, of course. So the Catholic family give money to set this school for the refugee children. And people call it Catholic school. Many people now is U.S. citizens. And like the former Secretary of Treasury, Michael Blumenthal, he was educated in this school and later became the PhD, got PhD in Princeton, then became ambassador and Secretary of Treasury when the Carter government. And he is a good friend. I visited, not long ago, I visited him in Princeton. He now is also director of Jewish Museum in Berlin, invited by German government. So half time in Berlin, half time in the Princeton. He was educated there, and also many people, very successful now in US, in Australia, in New Zealand, and Israel, and in Canada, and they learn to speak English in this school. Of course, they keep the religious service, as this is by German Jews plus overseas, basically reform, in reform wing, but Russian Jews in the Orthodox wing. Then I just mentioned the influence of the Holocaust. After Pearl Harbor, as you know, Japanese occupied all of Shanghai, and all the American citizens, British citizens became the prisoners. Those Sephardic Jews all in the camp because they're British, or some is American. But the Japanese don't know how to deal with these German refugees. Because in namely German citizens, they're alive. But in fact, after 1935, they're not German citizens, according to the law. So when the Japanese headed this man come to Shanghai, his name is Colonel Joseph Meising. He was chief of Gestapo in Tokyo, Japan. He came to Shanghai in August 1942. He gave Japanese called the final solution in Shanghai. Now we call the Meising plan. Meising plan. This plan asked Japanese to take the opportunity of the Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year, September 1942. They suggest all the Jewish people come together, take the opportunity to arrest them. Then the German, the Nazis suggest you can set up 3 concentration camps. We can teach you how to kill Jews, and we can provide you all the equipment free. And they even have very specific plan in the island called Chongming Island. It's the 3rd largest island. After Taiwan and Hainan is Chongming Island, it's in the Shanghai area. In this island, you can set, it's very good for you to set the concentration camp. So this is the photo from U.S. Army archives, because after war he was a war criminal. And the Japanese hated it. Even they kill a lot of Chinese in Nanjing, in other cities, but they still hesitate why we should kill Jews. And debating among the Japanese leadership. Some people say that yes, Hitler is our ally, so we should do this. Some people say no. Why we should kill Jews? So finally they reach compromise, not kill Jews, not arrest, not kill Jews, but set some area, force Jews to move in this area. So finally they set called the designated area for stateless refugee. It means a refugee without nationalities. And this means that the Goya is Japanese head, commander of this designated area. Any people want to go out, they should apply a special pass. You can go out like 8 a.m. and you have to back at 8 p.m. You cannot stay overnight. And Goya has the right to issue this special pass that people in the line. But most people, stay there for since they set up in February 1943. So Japanese hesitated for several months, finally decided to do this because very strong pressure from Nazis. And I should say no people were killed in this area. But in a very difficult time, especially in 1944, some older people, children, died because cold weather and the shortage of food, some reason. And this is ghetto life. Many people still remember how their mother and grandmother make the Jewish food in Shanghai. We call Jewish dinner made in Hongqiu ghetto, the area called Hongqiu. The Professor Small visits there. Now we have museum, have monument in memory of Holocaust survivors. So if you come to Shanghai, we can make arrangement to visit all this area. And why they still remember this? Because when their mother, grandmother makes this food, they feel so delicious. They still remember this. But this way is Shanghai sweet, very smoky, take a long time, a small one. And usually take 1 or 2 hours to make dinner. Very difficult time for them. But they always told me we are lucky because all our relatives were killed in Auschwitz in World War. And finally, Japanese surrounded in August 1945. So this is the last day of the ghetto. We call it ghetto. It is not really ghetto. Because as you know, in Europe, the ghetto, only Jews live there. But in this designated area, Jews and Chinese live together. But the historians now all call the Hongqiu ghetto. It was the last day of Hongqiu ghetto. The refugees put on the flag on the wall, and next day, flags of the wall. Most people survived. Only some old and older people and children. The reason is, after Pearl Harbor, U.S. and all aligned state government didn't allow the money and food go to the enemy occupied area. So money not come, especially from the United States, especially the JDC play very important role. I met the president of JDC now. He still remembers this. They still now support several older people in Shanghai. Every month send money to them. And but after Pearl Harbor, the U.S. government, British or other government, they're not sure whether this money can get by the refugee. Maybe talk by Japanese, take by Japanese. So 1943 was very difficult. Money not come, food not come. But after the middle of 1944, money comes through the Switzerland, through the mutual country. Switzerland government guaranteed money must be paid by the refugee, and they did. So after the middle of 1934, the situation became better. A few words about Chinese Jewish acculturation. I mean, why I mention this because in my opinion, in my book, I will give this book to the library of this center so you can share this. I always think in China never native anti-Semitism. never I said indigenous and or spontaneous anti-Semitism. But I should say there was some anti-Semitism. Basically, we call it imported or imposed to China, never made by local Chinese. So in the city Kaifeng, in Harbin, Tianjin, Hong Kong, Shanghai, everywhere we can see the very peaceful relations between Chinese and Jews. And also there are many cases we call the acculturation. I show some photo. For example, the refugee in Shanghai, they change all this area. People call this area Little Vienna. They, you know, this is influence each other. They brought the Jewish culture to China, like Yiddish, like Judaism, like kosher food, like Yiddish drama or something. And also they're influenced by Chinese culture. Now we keep connection with many old former residents of China. For example, they like Chinese food. The people say that all Jewish like Chinese food, not only. And also they can speak little Chinese, especially Russian Jews, and they like they use the Chinese name. They can use the Tai Chi, or they use the traditional Chinese medicine and so on. Other things. Also, so you can see they're also influenced by Chinese culture. They exerted great influence over the Shanghai city. Like, well, I will show you some. Like Professor Alfred Wittenberg, a very famous musician in Germany before the Nazi. When Nazi came to power, he lost a job. Finally, he came to Shanghai. He became professor of the Shanghai Conservatory of Music. He taught many Chinese students. Now the students is the president of Shanghai Conservatory of Music. Many famous musician. It's his student. He is very famous violinist. He worked in China. After World War II, many people left China. He never left. He said, I don't want to back to Germany until he passed away in 1953. So now the students set a monument in memory of Professor Wittenberg. And also this kind of case in Ghetto, the Chinese Jewish people live together, I mentioned. They keep a very good relations with these two people, because these two people until now still keep very good relations. One is 85, one is 90 maybe. So they give me this photo. Also the photo is today's photo, two old people. I don't have the space to show too many photos. And also many children is dressed in Chinese way with Chinese dolls. This photo is, all people like this. We have an exhibition in Los Angeles in the Museum of Tolerance, co-sponsored by Simon Wiesenthal Center. And February, this end of February, we will have opening ceremony in Asian Museum in San Francisco. Also, this exhibition. This exhibition will be in New York, DC, and many invitations even from small cities like Orlando, Kansas City. For small cities, it's easy. For large cities, so all the museum is full scale. So you have to wait for a long time. And we use this as a cover, first photo. So people like this very much. These two ladies now are still, one in Australia, Melbourne, another in Israel, in Tel Aviv. Their families. Also, Professor Mr. Schiff is a very famous artist in China, and his book all describe Chinese life. Like this cartoon called I Like the Chinese. In fact, all this Chinese is not today's Chinese. This is 1930s. Our grandmother's time, Shanghai people like this. But his book is about 400 this kind of cartoon, vividly, and now published in China, called Mr. Shifu's cartoon or painting or something. Then I mentioned some of the more political things, is mutual support. Jews and Chinese people. It's a very interesting story. It's the first letter by Dr. CJSS. He was the founder of the Republic of China. We call him father of modern China. He wrote this letter to Mr. Ezra, leader of Jewish community in China, in Shanghai. He said, we support your movement to rebuild your national home and your state. So still now, Israeli government regards this letter as a great victory for Zionist movement to win the support from East Asian countries. After his letter, Japanese expressed support, Thailand expressed support, and some other countries. And also I should mention Madame Xi. He is the leader of China's democratic movement and also anti-Japanese movement. When the 1933 Nazi came to power to begin the anti-Jewish campaign, Madame Xi led this group to the German consulate in Shanghai, lodged a strong protest. This is the first Chinese leader to do this. And you can see his group. It's very important people. This is very famous. They call Lu Xun. I think if you do research on Chinese history, you know. And Lin Yutang later come to United States. And Cai Yuanpei, I think this is Cai Yuanpei. This is Lin Yutang. What is famous leader of China's democratic movement? They established an organization called China's Civil Rights Organization. Then I should mention Consul General Feng Shanho. He was Consul General in Vienna 1938 and 1940. He is one of the first diplomats who issued a visa to rescue Jews. In 1938, before 1938, it was Chinese embassy. After German occupied Vienna, became Chinese consulate. And after Kristallnacht, the Jews cannot find a place. Some friends said, hey, let's go to the almost 40 consulates. Always said no. Finally, they come to Chinese consulate, and Dr. Feng Shanho said, yes. How many visa you need? He said, I need 11. Because the Nazis said, if you have visa, you can release from the concentration camp, then you must leave in 24 hours. Leave all property here. So he used the 11 visa to save 11 lives. His father, his grandfather, all these people, because it's visa, he said, no, Chinese visa, you can leave. So Gestapo, the German secret police said, okay, go. So 11 people not all come to Shanghai, because at that time you don't need visa to come to Shanghai. Shanghai is open the door. Any people can get into Shanghai without visa. Why they need a visa? They need a visa to escape. If they don't have visa, you cannot leave. So the importance is in this. So Dr. Feng Shanho, now we don't know how many visa he needs. Some people said 2,000, some said 3,000. And last year we had, May of 2008, we had a special ceremony in U.S. Senate in memory of Dr. Feng Shanho. His daughter now living in the United States, in San Francisco. And I was invited as a VIP. And many senators, Senator Feinstein, Senator Lugar, all joined. And U.S. Senator have a special resolution or something in memory of Dr. Feng Shanho. And we also set a monument plaque for Dr. Feng Shanho. And the Israeli officially give him the right among nations, the first Chinese. And you can find even many German and Polish rescue Jews. But we said we cannot, I cannot read no Chinese. The reason because of war, you cannot find many writing materials. If you want to, you say you rescue Jews, you should have proof. But many Chinese, less educated, maybe they cannot keep this. Feng Shanho also didn't mention this. We find this because in Vienna we found we have seminar in 1994 in Salzburg and in Vienna. I met some people. They said, we got visa from Consul General from Shanghai. You should find him. Many diplomats, why not Chinese? So we try to find him. Unfortunately, when he found the Consul General from Shanghai, he just passed away. He passed away in 1997, I think. Then we give all material to the YIISA authorities, and they made a very serious investigation. If you want to issue the amount of rights, these three conditions. One is you cannot make money. Second, he is not Jew. Third is he rescued you here, but do some other bad things to you in other places. So finally, through 1 year, the three conditions were all okay. So finally, they issued Dr. Feng Shanhou, our right among the nations, a tree in the YIISA, Holocaust Museum. So now in U.S., why U.S. Senate? Because many refugees now is U.S. citizen. So many people write letters to the U.S. Senate, usually in memory of Dr. Feng Shanhou. So U.S., China, and Austria. The former Chinese embassy now is a Beethoven House or something like that. And they also put a plaque in memory of Dr. Feng Shanhou. I also should mention the Sugihara, Japanese consul in Lithuania. He also issued many visa to rescue Jews. New Yeshiva people got visa from Sugihara. The interesting is we have two Jewish generals in Chinese army. The first is Morris Cohen. We call him Two-Gun Cohen because he always had two-gun here. He was very close assistant to Dr. Sun Yat-sen. After Dr. Sun passed away, he worked for many Chinese leaders, including Jiang Kai-shi, and he became very close friend of Madame Sun Yat-sen, of course. And so after 1949, he was very special. He kept good relations with Taiwan and with Myanmar. And this is he come back to China in front of the stadium, the monument of Dr. Sun Yat-sen. And now in the United States, two books about him. And in Hollywood, they want to make a movie. And I don't think now they have script trying to write something. But this will be very interesting movie about him. Another one is Dr. Jacob Rosenfeld. He is Jewish general in the Chinese Communist Army. He was a left-wing people in Vienna. He was a member of Labour Party, Socialist Party, and he was arrested by Nazi, put in Buchenwald. And he got visa from Dr. Feng Shanhou, come to Shanghai. He was a PhD in Vienna University Medical School. So he opened small clinics in Shanghai. Then he go to the communist, the army's area. He joined the Chinese army. He worked there for almost 10 years. And after 1949, the Chinese government want to appoint him as a vice minister of health. But he want to come back to Austria to try and find his relatives, and he back to China. So the Chinese government said, okay, I hope you can come back. But very sad, when he arrived in Vienna, he found all the relatives were killed. Even cannot find one relative. But finally he found a cousin in Israel. So he went to Tel Aviv. Unfortunately, heart attack. Passed away in 1952 in Ramat Gan. So it's a very rare case. The Chinese government don't know where he is. Trying to find him, cannot, because no diplomatic relations between China and Israel. Until 1992, both countries established a diplomatic relations. Then Chinese government know he already passed away. So now they set by Chinese people, they set a monument in Ramat Gan. When the president of China visited Israel, pays special visit to this monument. Then about the Jews from China and Jews in today's China. Jews from China now live in all parts of the world. Many United States, reunion. Still some Jews in China became Chinese citizens. In our Congress, almost 10 members, 10 Jewish members. Now the 4 passed away, now still 5. Of course, they are Chinese citizens. Most important people is Mr. Israel Epstein. He joined the Chinese Revolution. He is very close friend of the downstream. In fact, he was born in Lithuania. And he is left-wing people. His father was a member of Bund, a very left-wing organization. Sorry. After People's Republic established, he became very important. I can say he is ministry level, member of the executive committee of the parliament. And when his 70th birthday, Deng Xiaoping came to his home. When 80, Jiang Zemin came to home. This is 90. 90, President Hu Jintao came to his home. And unfortunately, 2 months after the 90th birthday, he passed away. And Professor Sidney Shapiro, originally from Brooklyn, and he also joined, he married a Chinese, then became Chinese citizen. He is very famous, right? And he translated many Chinese novels to English, like Hong Lou Meng. It's really difficult to translate, and Shui Hu, or something like that. He's still alive, almost 90. And they have many reunions, like this Shanghai reunion. Every year they meet together in Australia, this is actually in Australia, in Berlin, in Vienna, in Canada, in the United States. And then many people come back, like Michael Blumenthal. He was Secretary Treasury, come back. Here. And there are several articles in New York Times, the Washington Post, about his return to Shanghai Gateway. Lord Lawrence Kaduri, this is I visited in Hong Kong, 1989, I think. He was already 91. His son come back. Maybe you know Ambassador Joseph Tokoa. He was Israeli ambassador to the United States. And in Shanghai, his name is Kaczynski. He was the leader of Shanghai Beitang. He came back with a Passover reunion in 1989. First time they used Israeli passport. Mr. Shaw Eisenberg, he was refugee. After war, he became very rich, and he invested in China a lot. His dream was set Shanghai Diamond Exchange Center. He signed an agreement with the mayor of Shanghai before 3 days before he passed away. Then his family continued to do this. So now I'm very happy to say the Shanghai Diamond Exchange Center, very active, very prosperous in China. In fact, almost 15 years ago, before he doing this, he asked me, he said, how many percent of Chinese getting rich? I said, I don't know, maybe 5%. He said, oh, there is no market for the diamond. Then I asked him, do you know how many Chinese? I don't have the idea. I told him, he said, oh, this is 60 million. So we decided to do this. Now the Diamond the Center now have more than 200 members from New York, from Tel Aviv, from Antwerp, from South Africa. Became a center, really a diamond center for not for China, for all the Far East. Market in Japan, in Korea, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Taiwan, and then in the east part of China, many people getting rich. And today's China, what about today, the Jewish community? In Hong Kong, about 5,000 Jews, very successful. Usually it's 3,000 because 2,000 people never go to synagogue. So I think 5,000 to 6,000. In Shanghai, I should tell you now, the number increased. Now almost 3,000 to 4,000. 5 years ago, only 500. because more and more company come to China, more and more bank come to China, more and more business. So most is I think most is from the United States, Canada, Australia, and about 20% from Israel, from Europe. In Taiwan, also a small Jewish community. The president's name is Shapiro, Ron Shapiro. Shapiro, he is a businessman. I show you the interesting photo. They have a Jewish wedding in Shanghai synagogue in 2008, March 2008. You can see this more clear. the rabbi come from all the Asia, from Singapore, from Shanghai, all Hasidim. Now we have 3 in Shanghai. I always say Shanghai. 3 Jewish community centers. Rabbi Greenberg from the United States, Chabad, and another is the first center, and second center by his brother. And the third center is very interesting, called the Center for Sephardic Jews, only for Sephardic Jews. So 3 centers already, 3,000 to 4,000. Finally, I say a few words about hot topic, more and more book. Come, I bring my several book. Fortunately, I cannot avoid. This is called Jews in China, and 2001, and then this is 2005 edition. This is Jews in Shanghai, only about Shanghai. And this is Jews Asia. Do the comparative studies on Jews in China, Japan, India, Singapore, and Philippines. This is Chinese book called Jewish Studies in China. 30 years retrospect from 1978 to 2008. And this is a book by Rina Klass, a Russian Jew. He was born in Shanghai. This is very interesting, all small story. And I write the preface of her. She now lives in Palo Alto, near Stanford University. And a monument for Holocaust. When the professor is small in Shanghai, we bring him to there. And many people come to Shanghai, like ISGAP, or Israeli leader. I don't give all photos. And president is a wise man, Yehuda Olmert. I should mention him. He come to Shanghai only for 1 day. He did all the Jewish sites. I accompanied him. He said, I must go to Harbin to see my grandfather. So he fly to Harbin, stay 2 or 3 hours to the Jewish cemetery. So I show you this. You can see this is his grandfather. This is a Russia. Yosef Mosimovich already met his father. Passed away in 1941. So this is very significant. So I took this photo and show you. And Simon Peres, he visited China many times, very close friend of China. And we invite him to join the opening Olympic. So Ariel Sharon, and I should mention some not Jewish leader, President of Austria, Thomas Cresdio. He come to Shanghai, especially visit this area. He said, today I come. First, I want to say sorry. We cannot protect them, and they come to China. Secondly, I want to say thank you. Thanks to Chinese people for rescue them. Especially I should mention German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder. He's very smart people. Every time he comes to Shanghai, he visits the Jewish area. He said, I want to show the world, never again. Especially I remember 1999, I accompanied him. At that time, the neo-Nazi party on the street. And in Austria, the neo-Nazi party came to parliament. He was very angry. So he said I should pay a visit to the synagogue. I want to show the world. And of course, this lady you know. And this is, it was July 1998. We worked very hard for her visit. For 3 months, the security people come to check everything. Only 15 minutes. But finally, he gave a speech 15 minutes. So totally 30 minutes. But very nice. And he really good speech. And he stand there with all the member of delegation for 2 minutes. in memory of Jewish community, especially Holocaust victims. And I should mention Simon Lisenson. Also Simon Lisenson, because they do Holocaust studies, so very interested in Shanghai. I visited in Vienna. Recently, we translated his book, Sunflower, into Chinese, in memory of his 100th birthday. We now have Austria Holocaust Memorial Service. Every year, they send young people to our center. This is not Jewish. They come to our center for 1 year service, like 1 year military. I think Germany and Austria do this very well. And for the 60th anniversary of the get-go, we have a special seminar in November 2005, and Michael Blumenthal invited me to give a keynote speech. So I think this is maybe last one. Yes, I should stop here. And I think we can keep more time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.